grown my net worth almost 50K in the past 10 months by making intentional choices and sticking to the plan. While this may feel like rapid progress, it is the result of slow, steady, hard, disciplined work. And I think it's only fair to say that while I think that exposure to many different ideas and philosophies about money is really helpful, I have extra income every month, which is why I'm able to make progress to my goals. So I think what I have to say is helpful no matter where you're at in your financial journey, but it will be most helpful if you're in a similar situation to me and are looking at how to manage your money and set up a budget and think about these things. So I'm hoping to provide some insight into how I manage my money in this situation. In this video, I'm gonna set my budget up with you as if I were starting from scratch and share what I think about and what you need to know in order to even get started with planning for your money. If we're meeting for the first time, hi, I'm Sandra. I'm a 26-year-old occupational therapist living in Denver, Colorado. I make $76,000 a year, and I am paying off my student loans from grad school, as well as sharing my whole financial journey with you, which includes transparency in my spending, financial updates, and updates as I aggressively tackle my debt, which started at $127,000 and is now down to 90K. So before we get too far, like this video because it really helps me, and you are a nice, wonderful person who wants to help me, right? Now let's talk about budgeting. I use what's called a zero-based budgeting system, which means I essentially just get my income and assign every single dollar a job. If you're interested in setting up a budget alongside me, the template that I use is linked down below. Now, knowing your numbers and knowing your goals is the first step to actually setting up a budget. It's the same as any other goal. You can't create a map without knowing what the end goal is and also what tools you have to get there. So to help get an understanding of my current financial position, I like to ask the following things. First, I'd like to know what's the monthly income after taxes. What am I actually bringing home every single month? If you don't already know this, go ahead and pull up some pay stubs and calculate it. If your income is variable, this gets a little bit more challenging, but what you're looking for is either an average or the lowest that you could possibly earn in a month. For me, I can expect to bring home about $4,000 every single month, so that's what we're gonna work with. The next thing you need to know is what are your regular necessary expenses that don't change. These are non-negotiables, starting with what you need to live, so housing, food, then what you need to work, so transportation, maybe there's some sort of credentials or anything involved with that you have to be constantly renewing, and then finally minimum debt payments that you have to be making. These are your non-negotiable expenses and they are usually fixed. Mine add up to just over $1,000 every single month. Now we need to know what else we've been spending money on. One of the core habits I have with my money is tracking all of my expenses. This is a great habit to get into because you can see how your spending creates your quality of life. You absolutely have to know what you're spending your money on every single month so that you can know if A, it's in line with what you actually make, and B, it's in line with your lifestyle. So open a Word document, pull out a piece of paper, go through every single bank account, every single credit card account, and write down every single expense within at least 1 month, if not 2 or 3. Then you're just gonna add up the total, and congrats, you've started a new habit. When I first tracked, I found I was spending a lot of money on conveniences, so grabbing coffee or food out, and that's not something that I prioritize. I was also spending money impulsively, like at Target or in the mall, on trendy items of clothing, which again is not something that I necessarily value or that I think adds to my quality of life. These might be different for you. So now that I actually took the time to track my expenses and see that those things were not in alignment with how I wanted to live, I have essentially stopped doing them and saved money in those areas so that I could put it towards other areas, which includes more travel, less trendy clothes. The next thing you need to know is what are your total debts. If you don't already know this information, it's time for another list. I started with $127,000 of student loan debt. Currently, I have just under $90,000. Then we need to know what are your total starting investments, if you have any at all. This includes your 401k. I personally don't include any pre-tax investments in my budget, but I like to know what my total investments are. So you'll be very surprised on what I say here. If you don't already know this information, you need a list. I currently have just under $10,000 invested. Now, what are your goals? This is where you get to dream a little bit. What is a life that you want to live? What do you value? For me, it's financial freedom, meaning that I want to get to a point where I'm not directly exchanging time for money. I want debt freedom, I want to travel, I want to spend money on my health and my hobbies. So now I know those things about myself and I'm using my money to build towards that lifestyle. You might value nice bags or eating really fancy food out. There's no moral value to any of these things. You just have to put your money towards the things that you feel make your life worth living. So because I want financial freedom and debt freedom, my priorities right now are to pay off my debt and then invest $100,000, ideally by the time I turn 30. I came up with these goals because ultimately my goal is to retire or become financially flexible early, and these are two of the first steps that I need to take in order to go that direction. Okay, now you have the basics, you have a picture of what we're working with, and you're not operating blindly. Now, I created this budget template to work with my brain, and my brain loves having targets that I can work towards regularly. So the way that this works is I can set up all of my numbers once, and these are expected targets that pull into every single month, and I can assign and spend money accordingly in these categories and see how I measure up to the target values. I like having consistent targets every single month because I think consistency is a huge part of me achieving my financial goals. So what I'll do is I'll go through every single category with you and assign money according to that category and explain why I made the choice that I made. Starting with my income. For me, I make $4,000 a month for my full-time job as an occupational therapist. That's what I can expect to make. That goes in that category. Now there are a few more lines, so if you happen to have multiple streams of income, you can input those all here. I always like to have an other column, which I just set to 0, because I'm not expecting to make any money from anything else, but I do a lot of dog sitting, babysitting, have gifts come in that I like to keep in my bookkeeping because I'm assigning that money to a job. So I'll go ahead and put that in as an option as well. This way I can really get into the nitty-gritty of what my exact income is every single month and make sure that I'm putting all that money to work for me. Next are my fixed expenses. For me, these are shared expenses with my boyfriend, which covers my housing, groceries, and basic transportation costs. And then I have a phone bill and I have my car insurance. So I'll just pop what I expect to spend every single month on those. Then I have my debt payments. And the way that I see it in my brain is I can put my minimum payment or the target amount that I want to put towards the loans there. I'm aggressively paying off my debt. I like to track how much more I'm putting to my debt than the minimum every single month. So I'm gonna go ahead and just put in what the minimum payment for each of my debts is. And while I say that I put $900 more each month, I really just put as much as I can towards these debts. So it does change a little bit. But if you're not really understanding what I'm saying about putting your target payment versus your minimum debt payment, for example, for my first loan, my minimum payment is $224 every single month. I usually put an extra $30 a month to this loan. So if I wanted to, I could put $254 as my target amount in this box. I don't want to. I'm gonna put the $224 because that's my minimum payment. And then if I put $254 to it, I'll see that I made an extra payment of $30. And this is just because it works better for my brain. Real quick, why is debt payoff a priority for me? How did I even get to this point where I'm deciding to pay off my debt? Paying off my debt means ridding myself of a fixed cost that is over $1,000 per month. And that is over a quarter of my income every single month. My debt is all 5% interest or above, so I can't really safely out invest it. I technically can, but the gains that I would make investing the money don't have as much value to me as paying off the money would. And this is because as soon as I pay off my debt, I free up $1,000 a month to put towards either financial goals or to potentially not even need at all, which would mean that I could reduce the hours that I spend at work. And as we know, time freedom is a huge value of mine. So paying off my debt actually means that I reach a degree of financial freedom sooner, mostly because I'm not planning to inflate my lifestyle a whole ton, because quite honestly, with what I value and what I would want to increase, I can't if I don't have more time. This is completely a personal choice, but I think it's helpful to understand why I'm making the choice that I made. Next is investments, and I view this kind of the same as debt, where you could put your minimum payment or your target payment. For me, I don't usually put more money towards my investments than my minimum goal, which is $583 a month after tax. So it's kind of a minimum and a target. If you're not even sure like how much you should be investing, start by running your numbers. Finances are unfortunately a number. There's lots of calculators online. The basic rule is that when you retire, you can draw down 4% of your investment per year. So I would just start by using your current income. So if you make $80,000 per year and you want to be able to spend that when you retire, you would need to have $2 million invested. So you can plug that in, either see how much you would need to invest every single month to retire at a certain age, or see how much you're investing now, what it's going to grow to. The younger you are, the more time your money has to grow, which means that hypothetically you have to invest less in order to earn more. So I hear a lot of people be like, oh, that's something for me to worry about down the road. But I would actually say if you start worrying about it now and are able to put some money towards investments, you're saving yourself a lot of worry down the road. Regardless, there's a lot of power in knowing your numbers. It can help motivate you, or it can help you feel calm and know that you're okay. Next, we have savings. I have no large savings goal at the moment. My emergency fund is fully funded at $10,000. So my savings goals are currently all sinking fund oriented. A sinking fund is just a savings account that is dedicated towards an expense. This is money that you're allowed to spend on that expense, essentially. You are just saving up for something. It is not complicated at all. So I have savings for larger purchases that I like to make throughout the year that I wouldn't be able to afford out of pocket in a single month, like my ski pass, and a savings account for travel. And then I also have savings account for big expenses that tend to pop up throughout a year. And this is just so that I have a pocket of money to pull from so I don't get screwed by those big expenses like car maintenance. I really love sinking funds because they allow me to feel absolutely no guilt about an expense like travel or my ski pass. And then they also help me just be prepared for adulty things. I don't put a lot of money towards my sinking funds. This is a breakdown of what I like to put towards my sinking funds, and it all adds up. For my ski pass, I just calculated how much I would need to save every single month in order to afford a $400 purchase. And then for other things, I just calculated what would be reasonable for me to save. You can kind of see that my saving reflects how I value these things, because travel is the highest that I save every single month at $100 a month. I will likely be adjusting this as the Japan trip comes closer and have a specific Japan bucket. But right now my travel is a little bit spontaneous, so I just have a flat $100 a month that I can put towards travel. Another thing I did, because this is my budget template and I really like it, is I made it so that you could spend directly from these savings accounts. I thought that was helpful because I used to have to like move money from my savings as income and draw it down, but now I can just spend and tell the template, hey, I'm spending directly from this savings account, so spend that money. So that's one thing that I really like about this template. And finally, we have variable expenses. This is anything that varies from month to month or is just your spending. For me, this is my personal spending, which I keep quite low because, like I said, my biggest priority is my debt payoff. Then that $200 a month usually covers the shopping and social spending that I need to do. The great thing that I like about zero-based budgeting is that every single dollar is quite literally working for me because I gave it a job. So what I'm saying when I put this money in the variable spending is, here money, you're here to be spent. And then when I go spend that money, I spend it on whatever I want without any guilt about anything. Just this morning, I bought some friends some bagels, and it felt so good to be generous with that money because I knew that I could afford it. And essentially my money is doing the job that I assigned to it, so it's working for me in a good way. So as long as I am spending it on its job, it's mine to do that with. So now my target amounts are set for the year, and every single month I can see how I'm doing with these in mind. All I have to do is keep up with a few simple habits. Every single time I get paid, I track this in the income table. Then I assign all of that income to its job for the month. So this is anything that gets paid, like any bills I pay when I get paid or investments or debt payments I make. I also have the option to assign money to my fixed and variable expenses as well as my savings account. That way I can see how much money I have left over after it's all been assigned. So I get paid and I make any payments and tell the little computer thing that I made the payments, and then I also assign money appropriately so that I know, hey, I've set this money aside for this thing. Having the option to assign specifically for like my fixed expenses has allowed me to get ahead on my fixed expenses. So I always am 1 month ahead on my fixed expenses, meaning that in May, I know that I have June's rent and everything paid for. And then every single time that I spend money, I track it in the expenses, whether it goes to my debt, to fixed expenses, to variable expenses, or is spent from my savings. I do this once a week. I sit down every single Monday and go through all my accounts and track my spending. What this does is it gives me a super clear picture of what I'm actually spending every single month. And like I said earlier, being in touch and in tune with what I'm spending and seeing, hey, am I living the life I want to live, and am I spending money on the things that are in line with the life I want to live, is so helpful. Ultimately, this budget system and the techniques that I use and how I think about my money are what have helped me make huge financial progress in the past 10 months. So if you're interested in seeing how this all plays out, go ahead and subscribe, because I share regular monthly updates as well as share how I'm budgeting my money every couple weeks when I get paid. And if you're interested in seeing how I spend my money and what kind of lifestyle I'm living, I also share a couple vlogs, and I'll be sharing a few more of those by popular request. I like to be super transparent with my finances. I think it's helpful to see how other people spend their money and how that reflects in their life. I'll be active in the comments, so if you have any questions, go ahead and comment them down below. And as always, I'll see you next time.